Thanks, Susan.
You're welcome.
All right, let's get some reaction from some MPs on this. How widespread is the abuse? What's the reaction? Should the rules change if indeed the rules allow this kind of behavior or not? Aaron O'Toole joins me. He is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade. Charlie Angus is the NDP's ethics critic, and the Liberal finance critic Scott Bryson is also here. Hi, gents.
Hello, Pat.
All right, all three of these senators Susan was just talking about in hot water for travel expenses. Thus far, these are all Conservative senators, Aaron O'Toole. How does this reflect on the government?
Certainly, the big thing I get from this, Evan, is these are expenses that were disclosed as part of our party's disclosure. So my expenses for December went up at the end of the month. They're on my website, as my disclosures have been. And people will have to make the smart decisions, and it is up to parliamentarians to make decisions in the best way to save money, and the Prime Minister reiterated that today. What is telling, though, and Susan alluded to this, is we remember back to September when Mr. Trudeau, with great fanfare, announced that they were going to make proactive disclosure. Part of that was because there was questions about his travel for paid speaking events. Since that one disclosure, they've not disclosed anything.
All right,
our party made the same commitment and have lived up to it.
I don't know how loud the applause should be because they've reported this on their own, but it's good that they have. It's publicly available, and the Liberal senators have not done so. Fair enough point. But let's get back to the fact that they reported it, and no one seemed to think it was weird that you're flying back and forth to Toronto in business class. Why did that not ring in the midst of the Senate scandal? Why did nobody flag that? Why did it take a CBC investigation to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be flying Ottawa to Toronto business class?
Every parliamentarian, MP and senator, and in our party we're disclosing monthly, as I said, Evan, has to make their choices with respect to travel. And they should be doing it in a way that saves. And the one good thing about the bright light that disclosure like we've been doing will shine is people will make better decisions, and they should be making better decisions in some cases. Senator Tanis has already said he will, and that's our commitment. Our caucus has been doing it, and we should be trying to approach travel with saving money for Canadians.
Now, this, by the way, they didn't break any rules, and I'll get to that, but let's just talk about responsibility. Again, does this reflect, though, on the government? And you talk about transparency, you talk about watching dollars, and then you got senators flying around on business class.
This is about making the best decisions, and each senator should. And I'm glad you're actually looking at these questions. And, you know, our monthly disclosure has led to some of these questions, and that, I think, will instill some discipline and will lead to better decisions by some people. And as the Prime Minister reiterated, we're here as Conservatives to try and make the best decisions. I'd ask, you know, my friend Scott, why they haven't been disclosing after all the fanfare in September, and then just before the audit on the Senate, they threw all the senators out of the audit. So they seem to be avoiding the issue entirely.
Well, all right, well, we'll get to that for sure. Let me get to Charlie Angus. Should senators be barred from flying business class on the public dime?
Well, Evan, I think there's two issues here. One, my colleague talks about making choices and judgment. We really have, over the last few years, seen in the House of Commons the issue. We have to be accountable to taxpayers. It's time to tighten belts. And so issues of flights, how you fly, that's all dealt with. My staff deal with that all the time. It seems that the Senate continually sees themselves as somehow outside of this, not accountable. They don't have electors, so this is an issue. I don't think they necessarily feel that they're accountable to the taxpayer. I'm concerned, however, if we just simply look at a gotcha moment and not the bigger problem with Senate travel, which is their ability to travel wherever they want, however they want, whenever they want. This is the big question. This is what came out of the investigation into Pamela Wallin. It wasn't just that she was flying first class. It was that she has all these side projects on the side. She sits on boards of all these directors, and they can fly for whatever reason whenever they want. I think that we need to see a larger overview of Senate travel and start to really clip the wings to ensure some accountability.
All right. Let me start with, let me get to Mr. Bryson. First of all, we know about Senate expenses for Conservative senators. Why haven't Liberal senators posted their expenses? expenses?
Well, firstly, it's Justin Trudeau who has led the charge on disclosure, proactive disclosure of parliamentarians' expenses.
But in this case, it looks like he's leading from behind. There's no disclosure.
We report quarterly, Evan, and the next report will be out, I believe, next week for the last quarter. And that will include those senators who were part of the Liberal caucus at that time for that period. But again, before the Conservatives were reporting proactively the expenses of parliamentarians, Justin Trudeau forced that issue, and frankly, from an accountability and transparency perspective, the public deserves to know. And I think this is actually this result where the public is aware of expenses. I think is a good thing.
Mr. Bryson, is it a bit ironic that you're declaring victory on transparency when we actually can't see any Liberal expenses? We could see Tory expenses. We can't see Liberals, and yet you're declaring victory on transparency. I don't get it.
We report quarterly, Evan. That means 4 times per year as opposed to monthly. It still means transparent. It means you have to.
I know what it means, sir. I'm just trying to find your expenses.
Well, actually, you can go to the Liberal website and look at MPs' expenses. You'll be able to actually look at senators' expenses and MPs' expenses when the report is made public, I think, next week, actually. So it's quarterly versus monthly. The point is that Trudeau has led the charge on this, and of course the Conservatives are doing it now. I think that's a good thing. I wish the NDP would do that. Frankly, I wish the House of Commons would do it overall and would manage the process so that we are all in the same system of proactive disclosure, and the House actually is enforcing that. I think it makes a lot of sense.
So should senators or MPs be able to fly first class in your view?
Oh, I think that the changes made in the House in recent years make a lot of sense. And shorter flights, there's no business class. Companies have done the same thing. I mean, we're asking Canadians to tighten their belts in a lot of cases, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I actually had thought the Senate had made some of the same changes on flights. And I think that what has been done in the House of Commons actually is better governance.
All right. So, Mr. O'Toole, what now? These senators are booking flights. It's within the rules. Is there going to be a move now to change the rules so this doesn't happen again if there's a perception, or if they follow the rules, what's the big deal here?
No, I think there's rules, but then there's also judgment. And I know some of our colleagues are already saying to people, think about what's the best way to travel depending on where you are. I'm fortunate enough, I'm 4 hours away. I drive or take the train. Other people have to fly. That's our democracy. We're a big country. But everyone should make the best decisions. I came from the private sector. I tend to agree with Scott. We should probably follow that model that, under a certain number of hours of flights, it should be economy all the time. I would support that 100%. And so getting a little more clarity on this so that it makes people make the best judgment. But, I have to comment on Mr. Bryson's comments about the charge Justin Trudeau's been leading. It's a pretty short charge when you issue for the press release and then we see nothing. We've been doing it regularly. The NDP's not doing anything at all. So we're going to learn from these disclosures and improve what some of our senators are doing.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I'm looking at the disclosures right now. I got Scott Bryson's disclosure up right here. He discloses his travel and some expenses. No detail, just the basic. This is a pretty basic level of disclosure about the prices. Mr. Angus, have you and your party all decided even to go to this level?
Well, I think, again, Evan, what we're seeing is the importance, and Mr. Bryson had raised this, the House should set the standard for this. I'm very wary of trusting individual choice when it comes to, if you have an embarrassing expense claim, you just don't post it. This is something we're trying to push through with hopefully getting the support of the other parties. Let's get a standard so that it's objective, it's run by the House, and in fact insists that the Senate meets that same standard as well, so that if someone does rack up a huge flight and they bring all their relatives with them, they can't say, well, I just won't put that up this month. This will go through the House, and it should be out there for people to see. And then I think, again, the larger issue of travel is important. It's not, again, something that we need to be saying about choice and gotcha moments, but we have to have certain rules, and unfortunately, again and again and again, the Senate seems to believe that they're not elected and they're not accountable, and they never seem to meet any of the same standard or rules that we're setting in the House of Commons.
I have to correct, Senator Tanis was elected, actually, and he's already apologized by He was
And he has
elected by
apologized.
Albertans.
That's fair. He has
and
apologized.
Charlie
yeah.
seems to want election, so I'm hoping they might support our bill before the House to elect senators.
Senator Tanis was elected.
Check
He
this guy
also
out.
has said he didn't know the rules. This happened early on in his time, he said, and he has apologized. He did. Susan Bonner did interview him. But Aaron O'Toole, does this give you any pause to rethink the relationship between the Conservative Senate caucus and the rest of the caucus? Is it time to turn them loose as the Liberals have done?
Look, Evan, I said clearly that when Mr. Trudeau made the sudden announcement that these Liberal senators were now senators that were Liberal, was really done because of the disclosure. They weren't disclosing after September. There was an audit coming on expenses in the Senate, and so suddenly they pushed the senators off their boat. We're working with our senators. They're all disclosing, and I think you'll see people making better decisions because, as the Prime Minister said, we should treat all of our travel with savings in mind for the taxpayers, and that's what we're committed to.
All right, let me just hold you there. I want to keep you around for another story we've got, and I'll bring in a reporter, Aaron O'Toole, Charlie Angus, and Scott Bryson. If you wouldn't mind commenting on another story coming up, we want to hear from our